Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing related tweets, or of course you can subscribe to this channel. Let's talk boxing. Let's talk about what we saw on Saturday night, an event that will be spoken of for years to come. An unheralded but talented fighter by the name of GEORGE Kambosos dethroned the takeover Teofimo Lopez to become the undisputed, or the unified, depending on where you stand on this, lightweight champion of the world. It was a stunning performance, embellished with passion, skill, blood, guts and thunder, cloaked within poetic drama of conflict in the squared circle. It was the culmination of a life's dedication to the sport. Earlier in the year, we saw another victory branded as a shock as Alexander Usyk deposed of Anthony Joshua to become the unified heavyweight champion of the world. And after that fight, we delved into the psychology of Usyk on this channel. And the analysis proved to be extremely popular. So once again, we're compelled to explore the mindset of the man who will rival him for Fighter of the Year status, Ferocious GEORGE Kambosos. So, who is he really? Well, Kambosos marries the attributes of a tough, gritty and straight-talking Aussie with the passion, heart and spirit of a Hellene. But how has this modern-day gladiator shaped himself? As a child, George was overweight, and he was quite small of stature, attracting the attention of cowardly bullies that saw him as an easy target. He took action to build confidence and lose weight, and he began to play rugby. Shortly afterwards, he would also put on a pair of gloves, and for the first time, it was in this furious arena that he would find his peace. But he had a passion and a talent for both sports. One day, however, an inevitable ultimatum was presented to him. He would have to pick which path to pursue, as rugby training days clashed with boxing gym days. His beloved and selfless father, George, said, "This is your choice to make. Only you can decide which road to take, because this will shape your life forever." George became withdrawn for a few days, lost in his thoughts as he would be mourning the loss of one sport that he loved so much to dedicate himself to another. But he decided to take the path of the warrior. He chose boxing, and like tens of thousands of kids the world over, he vowed to one day become the champion of the world. Despite constructing dreams that men hold on to with all their might, the truth is the vast majority fall short. Perhaps they're not willing to go the extra mile. Perhaps they're not willing to leave home and hone themselves in the fire of combat, refining his craft. But additionally to acquiring skill, the correct mentality is also a requirement. A mentality that few men are even capable of fathoming, let alone reaching. But this was a boy fueled by the emotional pain suffered at the hands of bullies. This little fat kid, as he was called by those taunting him, shall never be a victim again. Never again shall I let another man impose his will on me. Never again shall I turn away without a fight when others seek to bring war to my doorstep. And this was the basis for what he was to become. Away from the squared circle, Kambosos has a loving and playful side, something few in the sport associate with him. But his wife's Instagram betrays his softer side, a side that his beautiful family are beneficiaries of. But this does not extinguish the flame of passion that he has within him. His body is a testament to that. Hardened by the sport and covered in tattoos that convey his mentality and philosophy. His skin is a canvas for contrasting philosophies, Orthodox Christianity and Spartan imagery, an homage to his Spartan ancestry. On his forearm in Greek we see the phrase molon lave. So what does this mean? In the year 480 BC in Thermopylae, a battle was to take place that would alter the course of history. For the ancient Greeks, the Olympic Games had a spiritual significance. Even wars would cease as the Hellenic world's greatest soldiers, warriors and athletes would descend upon Olympia to partake in the Games in a bid to seek glory. It was during this time that Greece was left largely undefended, and she was to be invaded by the largest army ever assembled, as the Persian Empire, consisting of soldiers from the Middle East and the depths of Asia and even Africa, descended upon Greece. With some of the greatest Hellenic warriors away, King Leonidas of Sparta could only amass an army of 300. They would be joined by over 1,000 fellow Greeks that were locals, not soldiers, but farmers and regular citizens simply seeking to stand up for their land. No matter how well the Spartans were trained, no matter what spirit they displayed, the 300 would surely be overrun by the army of 250,000. A strategy of war was needed, so they camped at the narrow pass at Thermopylae. To the left, a mountain, and 49 meters away to the right, the sea. The Persians would have to go through that bottleneck to get to the rest of Greece, and so the 300 could ensure that although they faced consistent attacks wave after wave, the numbers would be more manageable here. So it is here where they decided to make their final stand. The Spartans had a phrase, "Return with your shield or on it," a term used by Kambosos in the build-up to his fight against Teofimo Lopez. A victorious Spartan soldier would return with his shield held proudly, but if he was killed in battle, he would be placed on the shield and then on a horse and brought back to Sparta for a proud burial. However, if a Spartan soldier would have died with an arrow in the back, it would have been assumed that he fled in fear and cowardice, and this would not be tolerated, and thus he would be refused a burial, and his name would be cloaked in shame. Thus the soldiers knew that there were only two possible scenarios that would be acceptable: the almost unattainable hope of returning with your shield, or the tragic but heroic end of returning on your shield. As the Persian army arrived, a messenger was sent to King Leonidas. He was given a chance to submit. "Hand us your weapons and surrender. You cannot win. There are so many of us here that our arrows will blot out the sun." The response was a defiant one. "Well then, we shall fight in darkness." The furious Persian king decided to give them one final chance. "Hand over your weapons and we shall give you some freedoms. You will be answerable to us, but treated well and given high positions in the empire, you can still experience happy times. Just hand over your weapons." This time, a short phrase that would be immortalized in Hellenic history was to be returned. "Molon lave," translating to "try and come and get them." How many times over the years have you seen movies expressing this type of defiance in some sort of street fight? "You want some of this? Come and get it." Well, it was such a moment of defiance, despite the terrifying obstacle they faced and the almost guaranteed fate of death. Nonetheless, they refused to live a life on their knees. They refused to have their freedoms taken away. They refused to allow a draconian ruling power to govern them and alter their way of life forever. Their autonomy and liberty would not be exchanged for tyranny. It mattered not that this force was unbeatable. The shackles of fear would not take hold. They would fight. They repelled this war machine for days as bodies piled up after wave of attack. And the Persian Empire's army began to lose the taste for battle. However, in the end, a traitor was to decide their fate, as a man named Ephialtes showed the Persian army a hidden route through the mountain in exchange for gold. It would enable them to bypass the narrow pass and attack from behind. The 300 fought heroically to the death, refusing to hand over their weapons even to their final breath. It was a dark day in Greek history, and to this day the Greek word for nightmare is the same as the traitor's name, Ephialtes. However, their sacrifice was to inspire the rest of Greece. Previously fragmented and war-torn, they united and won the war for liberty over tyranny. It is this phrase, "Molon lave," that George Kambosos has tattooed on his forearm. On the left center side of his back, we see a tattoo of King Leonidas, who Kambosos also named one of his children after. On the right, the phrase, "Never retreat, never surrender," encompassing the energy and the aura of the Spartans. On his right hand, that he used to drop Teofimo Lopez with in that earth-shattering moment in the first round, we also see the focused eyes of a Spartan soldier. Orthodox Christian imagery is intertwined with the Spartan tattoos as well, with Jesus Christ on his left side and the double-headed eagle of the Byzantine at the base of his neck. He also has the words "Elliniko Bathos" on the side of his neck, translating to Greek passion. In the dressing room, pre-fight, the song "Ego Είμαι Έλληνας" by Nodis Sfagianagis played as he had his hands wrapped. "I am a Greek" is the translation of the song. A song of defiance when facing tyrannical oppression from your own politicians or from abroad. It includes the words, "For years you have struck me, but for years I stand. For years you have sold me out. For years your aim is to vanquish me, a lost Greek, a buried Greek, a godless land. But I am a Greek. I will always rebel. A man of justice and a democrat. Now I am a beggar and your soul rejoices. I sell myself, but God shall not stand for it. You ask for my being and even my soul, but you shall not take it, not even from my grave. This was the message he was recycling in his mind immediately before battle as he prepared his metaphorical weapons for war. Meanwhile, two flags hung in his dressing room, the Australian and the Greek, proud of both nations, the nation of his birth and the nation of his blood. The Greek is comprised of 9 stripes, one to represent each syllable of the phrase eleftheria y thanatos, freedom or death. For Kambosos, liberty equates to fighting and winning in the arena, a warrior cut from an ancient cloth, a Spartan whose ancestry drives him alongside the love of his beloved family and his Orthodox faith. This is all somewhat reminiscent of other tough Aussie, Greek and Hellenic fighters. Michael Katsidis, whose relentless aggression and passion lit up the boxing world. He had Alexander the Great's Vergina Sun tattooed on his back, and he stopped the likes of Kevin Mitchell and dropped Hall of Famers like Rafael Marquez. There was also the former pound-for-pound #1 kickboxer in the world, Michael Zambidis. The former world heavyweight kickboxing champion of the world too, Stan Longinidis. Kambosos has that same type of aura about him. And in boxing, he has now reached the highest heights, and he plans on staying on the mountaintop. He has now defeated 2 former world champions in Lee Selby and Mickey Bay before toppling a warrior king, the undisputed champion Teofimo Lopez. On one tense winter night, the takeover became the game over. Prior to this, after beating Selby, Kambosos looked deep into the camera and gave an impassioned call-out to Teofimo. The world did not give him a chance, but a modern-day legend of British boxing, Carl the Cobra Froch, spoke of how impressed he was by the fact that Kambosos speaks with such passion and such self-belief. He said, he speaks as he fights with conviction. And if there was one fighter that embodies the warrior spirit, it is indeed the Cobra. And he noticed that that aura also surrounds Kambosos. The lightweight division is possibly the most talented in the entire sport. 4 American kings have been labelled: Lopez, Garcia, Davis and Haney. And there is also the legend, of course, that is Vasyl Lomachenko. At the moment, Kambosos sits at the peak. When Hercules faced the multi-headed giant water serpent, the Hydra, every time he would cut off one of her heads, 2 new heads would spring up in its place. Boxing can act in the same way. Perhaps Kambosos has taken the scalp of the scariest of all the heads in Lopez, but immediately the highly talented Shakur Stevenson also sprung up, so to speak, on Twitter, to claim that he would like to step up a division to fight Kambosos. Whether it is possible for the Ferocious one to continue to improve as a fighter and to slay the Hydra and all her heads remains to be seen, particularly as for the 3rd time in a row, he has not had to just overcome the talents of the opponent, but some terrible judging too. None of these fights were close enough to warrant a split decision outcome, but he still had to endure such treatment. But one thing is for sure. If any man is to establish a dominance and reign supreme in such a division, he must have a certain mindset. The mindset embodied by Ferocious George Kambosos. The mindset of a Spartan. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care and God bless.